The History of Western Immoren. Part 8. Life in the Iron Kingdoms. Life in the Iron Kingdoms is full of contrasts. Laborers and merchants engage in their generations-old trades, but do so in the midst of a massive industrial revolution. They pray to the same gods their families have worshipped for centuries, but their traditions are challenged by a rapidly changing world. The wonders of mechanica, the merging of technology and magic, are increasingly commonplace in some cities, but populations far from the walls of civilization still fear the beasts and savages of the wild. In the year 608 AR, the Iron Kingdoms are nations on the edge, with the wonders made possible by an age of reason on one side and the abyss of total war on the other. The Iron Kingdoms. The nations of the Iron Kingdoms comprise the human powers of Western Immoren. These are the diverse kingdoms whose borders were initially defined in the Corvus treaties signed in the aftermath of the rebellion against the Orgoth. These borders have changed considerably over the centuries, and many of the current wars are extensions of ongoing territorial disputes. In 608 AR, the Iron Kingdoms are in a momentary lull in an era of tremendous strife where nations have toppled nations, and others have been pushed to the brink. In these uncertain times, the people of Western Immoren continue on as best they can, laboring in factories and on farms, and are hoping the winds of war do not sweep up their homes and livelihoods. There is great opportunity for those willing to take up the sword in defense of their nation, or their principles, or simply in pursuit of coin and adventure. Cygnar. One of the great powers in Cygnar is the Iron Kingdoms. The southern nation of Cygnar is beset by enemies within and without. She is ruled by a king most considered just, and is the most rapidly modernizing state in Western Immoren. Her people are proud of the freedom and opportunities available to them, counting among their numbers some of the most brilliant minds in Caen. They are aware they enjoy higher quality of life than many others in the region, who are understandably envious of their prosperity. Even the lower classes of Cygnar live better lives than those elsewhere, due to advances in mechanica and laws implemented under the current sovereign reforming labor practices. Cygnar has become a city of industry and trade known throughout the Iron Kingdoms. Blessed with abundant resources, a long coastline, and a diverse geography and citizenry, and many other assets, the nation is sometimes referred to by her people as the jewel of the Iron Kingdoms. Her blue and gold banner features the heraldic symbol of Cygnar, the unmistakable Cygnarus. The Cygnus dates back to the unification of Cygnar at the end of the rebellion, formed during the Corvus treaties, and was chosen as a symbol of solidarity for the southern peoples. It also represents the bright future for this nation, whose people relied on their combined faith and courage to battle the Orgoth and forge the weapons that would ultimately defeat those tyrants. Traditionally, Cygnar has been the nation most accommodating to outsiders and other races. In addition to humans of all ethnic groups, Gobbers, Trollkin, Dwarves, and Orgron are welcome for the most part. Her lands are split between many feudal duchies and provinces, but Cygnar cities are her greatest strength. The nation's capital, the bustling city of Caspia, is called the City of Walls, after the towering fortifications surrounding it and running throughout its various districts. The walls of Caspia are so massive and ancient that entire neighborhoods and thoroughfares exist within them. More than 1 million citizens live and work within the maze of these massive walls. A hub of commerce by ship, road, or rail, Caspia is also one of the oldest cities in Western Immoren. It is home to both the throne of Cygnar and the Sanctium, a sovereign city within the city that is the seat of the Morwen faith. Cygnar was initially founded by Menites, and Caspia still retains many impressive temples to the Creator. The civil war that divided the capital into twin cities of Caspia and Sul resulted in the southern Menites relocating to the Protectorate of Menoth, with the result of today's Cygnar being predominantly Morwen. Although the nation feels the strain of the Protectorate's crusade, the Crown nonetheless still advocates religious tolerance, and its small Menite minority have a proud legacy going back to the priest kings of Golavant and Sidnat. Cygnar cities are amongst the most modern in western Immoren, for people among the most best educated. Most Cygnaran cities feature solid infrastructures with reliable plumbing, well-maintained roads, and measures to combat corruption and foster vital industry and public health. Only the poorest quarters of the city are squalid, and even there, representatives of the Church of Morrow make efforts to help the truly destitute. Cygnar boasts a large middle class of successful craftsmen, merchants, mechanical innovators, and scholars, and the gap between the poor and those of means is less pronounced than other nations. Llael in the northwest is the nation's second largest city, once the heart of the ancient kingdom of Thuria. It is now a shipping center that is home to the northern fleet, and is famed for the skill and lore of its arcanists. In the northeast, Corvus sits at the confluence of two major rivers, where a steady flow of riverboats passes through the bustling docks and multi-storied buildings that are slowly sinking into the muddy ground. Far to the west is Mercier, a city only easily reached by boat. In relative isolation, Mercier has developed its own distinct culture, including a large number of the normal population of Trollkin, who are sometimes exploited as cheap labor. Highgate in the west is seen as the guardian of the broken coasts. From its perch among the Wormwall Mountains, its massive steam-powered cranes hoist ships from the waters to safeguard them from Crixian pirates. These cities and the other major Cygnaran towns are all vibrant urban centers, conducting vital manufacturing work amid complex local politics. Many boast pioneers in industry and scientific advancement, as well as a number of prodigious universities. Yet with prosperity comes other dangers, and each city and major township is preyed upon by criminal communities seeking to exploit any opportunity. The civilized Cygnaran countryside with its lush farmlands is divided into several untamed regions, including the extensive Wormwall Mountains, the Gnarls, and the Fen Swamps. Though the nation's mountains maintain several highways and rail lines, these wild areas remain inhospitable and are populated by savage humans, wild Trollkin krells, and all manner of predatory beasts. Travel between major cities can be risky, with occasional military patrols and overworked road wardens able to protect only the main roads and railways. In the past few years, Cygnarans have seen the fall of their allies in Llael, the loss of the northern thornwood forest to the encroaching Khadoran Empire, and years of turmoil in their capital and neighboring Llael due to open warfare with the Protectorate. Cygnar remains on friendly terms with the nation of Ord, but the king's sovereign has proven reluctant to enter into a formal alliance, and has shrewdly negotiated for considerable concessions in return for even the most grudging and minimal military assistance. Cygnar's king Leto Ralthorn has a reputation as a just and resourceful monarch, who has ruled with intelligence in an extremely difficult time. A far cry from his hated brother, Vinter Ralthorn, Leto took the crown and freed Cygnar from tyranny. Despite holding strong against multiple enemies, though, King Leto has seen his support erode by many years of strife and several significant, if arguably unavoidable, defeats. While many military experts insist no monarch or general could have done better in the same circumstances, the loss of Llael and the Thornwood, combined with a considerable Trollkin-related unrest, have given considerable fuel to Leto's detractors, particularly in north of Cygnar. He retains many staunch supporters, but increasingly strident voices claim that he is a little too indecisive amid the nation's wars. The recent clashes between Caspia and Llael are a testament to Cygnar's precarious position. Hostility began during the Llaesian War, which Cygnar troops abroad were engaged against Khador, with Protectorate forces laying siege to Caspia's eastern gate. This was unsuccessful, but determined retaliation, and the Cygnaran army eventually breached the walls of Llael. Their invasion into the city proved to be costly and extended, consuming the lives of thousands on both sides. Eventually, the Protectorate reclaimed Llael and conducted a counterattack on the streets of Caspia, one which seemed near to swallow the entire city in conflict and threaten the palace. The disaster was only narrowly averted after a prolonged battle in which the king himself took up his blade. In the end, the battle only ended when the Protectorate's hierarch was struck down by one of Cygnar's commanding warcasters. Their morale broken, the Sulamenites withdrew, and there has always been a tense succession of hostilities between the two cities ever since. Massive garrisons in both cities stand ready to continue the conflict at the slightest provocation. Despite these events, Cygnar is well defended. Many say Cygnar's greatest asset is her advanced mechanica. Indeed, the nation is unequaled in the synthesis of magic and science. Her advanced technology is no more evident than her specialized military forces, such as the fabled storm blades and gun mages. But even frontline infantry field high-quality rifles and other ordnance and fight alongside some of the most sophisticated warjacks ever designed. Cygnar's ability to manage the division of military resources between its armies has been key to its endurance. Many in each operates independently to confront various threats, one in the north, one in the east, and one in the southwest, all supported by the reserves of the smaller Fourth Army. Similarly, the Royal Navy has divided its fleets between theaters of operation. Cygnar's navy is peerless in its technological might and is proven pivotal in preventing incursions from the sea. It would seem war is changing the pace of Cygnar's technology as swiftly as it's changing the pace of her people. Her foundries produce more weapons, warjacks, alchemic components, and material to support the war effort, and goods and raw materials throughout the kingdom are now rationed for the military. In truth, the Cygnaran spirit preserved in the hearts of her soldiers is the nation's true strength. The people of Cygnar are bloodied but unbowed. Every Cygnaran knows that at least one friend or family member who has died as a consequence of war, but even after massive losses over the recent years, many citizens are still eager to take up arms in defense of their country and crown. They are more than willing and ready to defend themselves and their beloved kingdom from those who would crush the principles and freedom for all that which Cygnar stands for. The Khadoran Empire. Khador is a land of sweeping expanses, fertile plains, imposing mountains, and dense forests. Her people are stalwart inheritors of an ancient civilization that once dominated the north. This history is ever present in the minds of the Khadorian people, for every generation repeats the tales of the legendary horse lords. These fierce warlords banded together, conquered the weaker tribes, and fashioned the proud Khadoran Empire. Some say the empire never truly fell, but simply endured a dark age until it could emerge and evolve into the modern nation of Khador. In 606 AR, bolstered by sweeping military conquests, the Khador sovereign declared herself Emperor Anya Vanar, and the kingdom of Khador became the Khadoran Empire, the continuation of the ancient legacy. Since the dawn of the Iron Kingdoms, the motherland has looked at her neighbors with contempt. Khador never felt compensated for their suffering at the hands of the Orgoth. At the Corvus Treaties, Cygnar, Ord, and Llael all claimed lands that had once belonged to the Khadoran Empire, a bitter pill to swallow, combined with the suffering of the Khadoran people in the centuries of the occupation. It was not long before the proud Khadorians sought to readdress these borders. Over the centuries, Khador has made numerous attempts to expand her holdings. Time and again, Khador's monarchs have felt the call to re-establish the Empire of Ord, blurring boundaries with the blood of border wars. The Khadorian people see their empress, Anya Vanar the ninth, or the 11th, as the personification of their nation, and call her the Petrovis Rodinovia, or the prime daughter of the motherland. The conquest of Llael fulfilled their ambitions of generations, and this success has only emboldened the empress. More than imperialism, more than nation building, for this ruler, the ongoing war is the expansion of a manifest destiny. The Khadoran people, by right, should rule the Iron Kingdoms, and she is willing to expand Khador's domination by any means necessary. Her armies have marched south and struck down the great Cygnaran fortress of Northgard, and with it claimed the entirety of the Thornwood Forest. Having rejoined Khador's southern border at the northern bank of the Black River, the High Command and its legions pause to regroup for their next campaign begins. To match her rivals over the past century, the motherland has taken great strides towards reinventing herself as a major industrial power. As a result of unchecked mechanized growth, the most Khadoran cities lie shadowed under a constant canopy of smoke and soot. Khadoran's industrial revolution has racked her citizens with growing pains, but the Kayazi merchant princes and other royal supporters have no intention of backing from their goal of total superiority. While some noble families may wonder if the cost to an ancient tradition is worth the rewards of a modern age, the grip of industrialization now spans the empire. Khadoreans are assiduous laborers who fervently devote their sweat and blood to their way of life. Patriotism is in their nature, and service is a badge of honor. Khador comes first, with religion and ethnicity following. Though the citizens are narrowly split between the Morrowind and Menite faiths, ancient religious feuds have been set aside for the call to the motherland. Members of Khador's Menite Old faith practice their religion as much as the same as the ancient horse lords did, and many of the aristocratic families are devout followers. Even so, the recent emergence of the Harbinger in the Protectorate threatened that solidarity, as tens of thousands of citizens chose to heed her call to join the Protectorate's crusade, and more may follow. Khador steamjacks are built in accordance with the motherland's emphasis on endurance and raw strength, and her railways are a source of much pride. A nation once comprising of pockets of ethnic societies, isolated in their remote forests and mountains, has transformed into an empire rising on the tide of nationalism. Her capital of Kursk is every bit as impressive as any southern city, with its great factories, schools of higher learning, and glorious cathedrals. The people of Khador have not enjoyed the fruits of the modern era as thoroughly as their southern neighbors, a fact that fuels their dreams of an empire. Most Khadoreans still work as unskilled laborers, although every year more of them join the ranks of craftsmen, and the great cities of the north houses branches of the Khadoran mechanics. Assembly as professionals and innovative as any of the Cygnar innovators. Military service is required of every adult male in Khador, and women are equally accepted, though not compelled. More citizens pursue military careers than in other nations, and combat skill is well respected in all areas of life. Even the politically powerful have to serve their time, creating lasting bonds that transcend class borders. Only a small number of Khadorians seek to evade military service, generally those who found among the criminal fraternities of Kursk and other major cities. Divided Llael. A fallen and fragmented nation, Llael's demise began in the winter of 604 AR, when, in a lightning attack, Khador invaded and caught its people and their Cygnar allies completely off guard. 7 months later, the Llaesian War ended with the surrender of Merrywind, the former capital. This has entirely changed the face of the nation, entering Llael into 4 long years of turmoil and constant adaptation to the changing face of their nation, as it has been occupied, conquered, and repeatedly battled over by foreign powers. Most of the people have no desire to host the larger conflicts by the battle-ready armies of the Iron Kingdoms, and desperately desire some return to normality, even if that means accepting foreign flags and masters. A minority of patriotic, stubborn, or embittered and enraged individuals refused to give up the dream of Llael and fight on, forming the core of the Llaelese resistance, whose struggles become more desperate with each passing week. At present, what was once Western Llael is increasingly accepting its lot and begun rebuilding. A sizable number of citizens of Umbrian descent look onto a new era with some optimism, as their once divided people have begun to reunite with bloodlines from the west. Eastern Llael contains several resistance havens, but it is increasingly dominated by the northern crusade of the Protectorate of Menoth and their religious zealotry. In truth, Llael was a failed state well before the Khadorians marched on their shared borders. The last strong Llaesian king died of old age almost 10 years before the onset of this war, and his death plunged Llael's nobles into a frenzy of self-consuming plots and politics. This included the assassination of all the former king's heirs, as well as a number of duels and assassinations, further thinning the ranks of the nobility. Prime Minister Danar Gabrian took power and proved to be a corrupt, self-interested leader, more intent on lining his own pockets than governing his own nation. The small and poorly funded Llaesian army was further reduced in favor of mercenary contracts and over-reliance on Cygnaran aid. The Cygnaran army spent considerable lives seeking to slow the inexorable Khadoran advance, but was ultimately forced to withdraw to defend Cygnar's own borders. It is widely believed that Galaberin collaborated with the Khadoreans by weakening the nation. Prior to the invasion, Llael had a centuries-old reputation as a haven for court intrigue and shrewd financiers. Llael maintained sovereignty through intense political brokering. Its income came from the collection of tariffs, made possible by its central location between several of the major powers of western Immoren. The region, in the midst of the trade route between Cygnar and Llael, is of considerable strategic importance. This has been a blessing and a curse at the same time, filling Llaesian pockets in times of peace, but considerably drawing the covetous eyes of Khador since the signing of the Corvus treaties. Despite recent turmoil, it has been most of its surviving citizens simply try to carve out lives for themselves as best they can and see the needs of their family. After almost 4 years under Khadorian rule, most have come to terms with being a part of the Khadoran Empire. Their lives, similar to those in Cygnar and Ord before, have in some respects improved under the effective management of the Khadorians. Many opportunities have come into the region as well as a result of the Khadoran investment, including work extending rail lines as well as considerable military industry, particularly in the capital of Immoren and the large western city of Llael. There is no doubt the Khadorians have improved the nation's infrastructure. Despite these factors, resentment towards the Khadorians linger, particularly in parts of Llael that saw the worst of the war. The tally of deaths from the invasion remains unknown. Tales of the burnings of Riversmet and other wartime horrors reverberate throughout the kingdom. It will take more than a few years for these incidents to be forgotten. In both Immoren and Llael, there is something of a reversal of fortune between the Rye and Umbrian people. While many Llaesian Umbrians are proud of their nation, they are also marginalized with military service their only hope for advancement. Many of the most fervent were killed in the invasion, fighting to save their homes. Those who remain remember the lack of respect they suffered from the Rye. The renewal of Umbrian spirit has swept through the region, and increasingly Umbrians are gaining positions of authority and influence while Rye scrambles to curry favor. For the Umbrians in particular, life has improved under the new government, even if the region remains in turmoil. Llael also possesses natural resources that for centuries enabled it to stay competitive with its larger neighbors, notably a high content of coal, and in the northern regions of the mountains, and particularly in Cygnar, great quantities of materials required for making of blasting powder. With nobility owning the lands, Llael's upper class increases their wealth from coal and powder profits, while the nation's poor did all the work. Indeed, the disparity between the classes apparently is more clear now in Llael than anywhere else in the kingdoms, yet thousands of workers from all over western Immoren arrive to work daily in the mines. Addendum: The Llaelsian resistance. Life among the resistance is hard, food is scarce, and one must remain constantly on the move. Any Llaes found to be supporting the resistance in any capacity, even by unknowingly providing food or shelter, face execution at the hands of the Khadorans. Ryden is the last city in the hands of the resistance, and is transformed from a tranquil city of wine into a heavily fortified encampment. Elsewhere, operatives must make do with the dubious security of safe houses and underground dens in Immoren and Llael. The Llaesian resistance is in a state of transition, but remains fiercely dedicated to its cause, perhaps all the more so as the dream of restoring Llael became even more likely. In Ryden, their emphasis is on the immediate needs of the citizens collected there, ensuring their preservation amidst desperate circumstances. The objective of the resistance outside of Raiden has become the disruption of Khadoran bureaucracy and harassment of the military, however possible, rather than pursuit of conventional military gains. The surviving resistance leaders have years of experience fighting difficult battles while outnumbered and outgunned. Some of them are former members of the Llaesian army or held prominent positions in esteemed groups like the Order of the Amethyst Rose, gun mages who have long dedicated themselves to the King of Llael. These veteran commanders are training the next generation of warriors for a different sort of war, one fought in alleyways and by small groups seeking to evade detection as they strike at their enemies and exact a cost in Khadoran blood and occupation. Funding for the resistance has also changed. Much of the financial support has come from a group of identifying themselves as the Highborn Covenant, former nobles of Llael who feel betrayed by the former prime minister. Many of these nobles, now living in exile in Cygnar or Ord, are willing to support those fighting at home, but as their situations have changed and their funding and supplies have dwindled, increasingly the resistance relies on alternative sources of support, including selling their services as mercenaries and relying on sympathy from their cause amongst displaced Llaes. Fundraising for the resistance has taken place whenever the former Llaes have settled, most particularly near Corvus and Cygnar, and in certain Auric cities like Five Fingers, Breck, and Tarna. Both fulfilling mercenary contracts and the need to raise funds, sometimes by questionable legal means, often requires resistance agents to go abroad on various dangerous missions. And addendum. Little has changed except now that the Khadoran laborers work alongside Llaesian citizens, and the fruits of their toil put food on the table of the Kayazi industrialists rather than the Rhinist aristocracy. Through battles between the Llaesian resistance and Khadoran occupiers still flares, the central conflict in the nation changed with the arrival of the Sul-Menite Northern Crusade. Technically allied with the resistance, the Northern Crusade has seized vast swaths of Llaesian land for the Protectorate of Menoth. New battle lines have been drawn between the Khadorians, who have conquered the region, and the Sul-Menites, with the Black River as their main divider. Eastern Llael, past the Black River, remains in greater chaos, with the southern portion still held by the most dedicated leaders of the Llaesian resistance, and the northern city of Llael and its environs in the grips of the Northern Crusade. The relationship between the allies of convenience became strained after the Protectorate moved to Llael, and it became clear that the Menites were more interested in gaining a foothold and converting the Llaesian citizenry than driving the Khadorians out. Many here who are not of the Menite faith have begun to wonder if their lives might have been better under Khadoran rule. For others, the difficulties of the last several years have provoked renewed piety, and they pray for salvation, miracles, divine intervention, or mercy. The faith of both Morwans and Menites in the region is stronger, and some Llaesians see the Northern Crusade not as invaders or occupiers, but as deliverers. Another significant power in the region is the looming presence of Rule in the north. Even the Khadoran Empire respects Rule's military might, and are aware of its interests here due to the ongoing vital trade through the region. Many southern Rule folk disapprove of the Khadoran Empire and its conquest. A number of Ruic citizens who lived and worked in the Llaesian cities were casualties of the war, but ultimately the preservation of trade is their priority. Rule trade with the Khadoran Empire is as much worth with the other nations as has been unwilling to take sides. Despite Khador's control of the Black River through Llael, the Ruic shipments have found ways to reach Cygnar and Ord. Some degree of Khadoran complicity seems to be likely, even if only in the form of bribes. In truth, the costs of Ruic interests are not as substantially greater than they were before the war. The coin once paid to Llaesian nobles and the merchants as exorbitant tariffs is now simply spent on bribes and smugglers. The simmering strife makes the region a considerably less desirable place to live, but also provides opportunities for the courageous and the ambitious. This is particularly true for mercenaries, as there is no end of clients looking for armed and skilled individuals. Whether motivated by greed or by sympathy for the locals, warriors for hire have flocked to the region, and a variety of commerce of services have sprung up to accommodate them. Locals may disdain such trade as war profiteering, but they may find themselves needing to rely on these sellswords for protection. Ord. The Kingdom of Ord is a land of shrouded moors, rolling highlands, and rocky coasts, bordering on the hungry Khadoran Empire to the north and the east, and the powerful Cygnar to the south. Ord has maintained its sovereignty through skillful diplomacy, backed by stalwart soldiers, and a navy capable of holding its own against any fleet on the Meridius. The Oric people are descendant from two mighty kingdoms, Thuria and Tordor, and its people are proud of that ancestry. For some, the tales of ancient glories help distract their difficult lives, as the nation has widespread poverty and a sharp divide between the wealthy and the poor. The Tordorian dominates the upper class and are particularly populous in the north, where they own and control most of the fertile land and prosperous wealth. Many of the wealthier Tordorians have made them fortunes in livestock. The region is famed for its cattle, goats, sheep, and horses. The Thurians, more numerous in the south, are far scarcer in the halls of power. Even those families that have risen to power are generally subordinate to their Tordorian counterparts. Those Thurians who attained any success have had to do so with wit and hard luck. The nation's ports are home to the finest sailors and dockmen of the western Immoren. Oric fishermen and sailors exert a great deal of control over seaborne trade routes all across the western seaboard. True, some Oric ports are pirate havens and thieves' dens, but the goods their merchantmen procure from all over the Iron Kingdoms can make even the most disreputable city worth the trip. Ord's largest city and most thriving trade center is Breck, where the leaders of merchant houses dominate the city's politics. While it is a city with a dark criminal underbelly, it is considerably the far fair face of Ord and is home to the famed Oric Navy. Equally important and far more darker reputation is Five Fingers, also known as the Port of Deceit, a city sprawling across numerous islands at the mouth of the Dragon's Tongue River. Five Fingers is a city that has made an industry of vice, including smuggling, gambling, and extortion. The seemingly lawless environment here, combined with Org's neutrality in the wars abroad, make Five Fingers appealing to the mercenary companies, and it has garnered a reputation as a place where deals can be struck for anything under the sun. As dangerous as it is, for many the unique opportunities offered in Five Fingers outweighs the risk. Ord is the poorest kingdom in western Immoren. Aside from peat harvested from hundreds of bogs, Ord has little natural resources, with livestock the only other significant export. The coal deposits in the riverbanks near Merowyn are considered abundant, but are only sufficient for the needs of the capital and the northern city of Midfist. Inland residents tending towards farming, raising livestock, or trade in peat or wool. Like the craggy hills and boggy moors, the people of Ord are rugged, weathered, and difficult to tame. They are mostly a common people who enjoy a wide variety of sports and gambling diversions from their everyday lives of dock work, shipbuilding, or tilling the fields. Those born to wealth live on large estates high above the lowlands. Both classes fall prey to numerous brigands that plague the nation despite the efforts of its king to eradicate them. While more famed for its navy, Oric has an army that has earned it the respect of countless border wars. The Oric army has managed to repel numerous Khadoran invasions throughout history despite its chronologically dated arms and relatively small size. Its soldiers are traditionally well-trained and brave, but the nation lacks the economic might to outfit them with the advanced mechanica now common in other armies of the Iron Kingdoms. Much of Ord's security has been derived from the rugged borders between Khador and the Oric interior, jagged hills fortified with dozens of holds and fastnesses. The recent seizure of the Thornwood by Khador has imperiled that, prompting the Auric army to increase recruitment and commit to a frenzy of construction among their eastern borders. Ord's king Bard Cathor II, also known as the Bard among his people, is sometimes called the Bandit King behind his back, relying on shrewd political maneuvering to ensure his kingdom's survival. Some say he earned his less than flattering moniker as much of his shady associations as from the curses of Castellians complaining above his high taxes. While he presents himself as a simple pleasure seeker, he is proven to be one of the shrewdest and best informed monarchs of the kingdoms, and possesses an expansive network of spies. Since the outbreak of war, he has carefully maintained the country's neutrality, even as he attempts to play other nations off one another. While Ord has suffered repeated attacks from Khador over the centuries, and Bard's sympathies rest with Cygnar, he is too pragmatic not to exploit opportunities to enrich his struggling kingdom. Such opportunities lately have bestowed the nation with the chance to become a more significant power, as the kingdom has not yet actively engaged in war. Ord is in an advantageous position. After the fall of Llael, many refugees, some possessing valuable skills, sought refuge in Midfist and Maryland. These led to the Free Order of the Golden Crucible establishing its new headquarters in Midfist, bringing with them a wealth of alchemic expertise, as well as considerable income from their far-flung membership. Cygnar seeks to solidify an alliance with the kingdom now that Llael has fallen, and the Auric throne recognizes his increased value to Cygnar. This has resulted in some exchanges of services and mechanica between the Cygnaran armory and the Auric navy, spearheaded by King Bard's second son, a distinguished naval officer who has taken up the cause of modernizing the kingdom's military assets. The annexation of the Thornwood by Khador resulted in an unexpected development when the Cygnaran city of Felling was cut off from the rest of the nation after the fall of Northgard. Mercenaries worked together with the Auric army, were able to provide the city relief from a Khadoran siege, and now Felling has become an Auric possession, creating a stalwart northern bastion for the Auric army. Cygnar's king Leto has seen fit to allow this situation to persist, at least until his nation can recapture the Thornwood. For now, it is better that Felling be in Auric rather than Khadoran hands. The city's citizens find themselves in a peculiar position, as it is populated by proud Mordinans who remain fiercely patriotic to Cygnar. Most are grateful to Ord, but are becoming prickly at any talk of the city becoming anything but Cygnaran. Nevertheless, the influx of Auric folk, including fresh soldiers, has been a boon, and the city is in its midst of finding a new identity. Thus far, Khador has proven reluctant to test Auric borders, as Khador's only source of commerce. Ord is a market the Kayazi wish to preserve. Like the tides from which the kingdom derives much of its livelihood, the Auric outlook seems to ebb and flow from day to day, and her leaders and king cast their nets into the choppy seas of politics and intrigue to see what bounties they could draw forth from the deep. Addendum. House Matei. If any group in Ord could be said to rival the authority of the throne, it would be the powerful Matei family, believing to have its fingers in virtually every major financial dealing across western Immoren. The family has been led by over 50 years by Castellan Isabel Matei, known as a merciless tyrant who will stop at nothing to increase the power and wealth of her house. Where wealth would not achieve her ends, she is said to turn quite readily to extortion and even murder. The Matei merchant house is the most influential in Ord and headquartered in the largest city of Breck, but its reach extends to a number of Auric and Khadoran port cities. The powerful royal family's only rival is the vast Mercurian League, and in recent years the conflict between these two groups has escalated into a bloody shadow war spanning multiple nations. Adding to its nefarious reputation is the house's long-standing rivalry with the Cathors, Ord's current ruling dynasty. From 381 to 421 AR, a Matei has sat on the throne. having seized the crown by assassination and losing it to the headman's axe. Many Castellians in Ord have convinced the Mattei house seeks to topple not only the Mercurian League, but the Cathars as well. And addendum. The Protectorate of Menoth. The newest of the nations recognized as the Iron Kingdoms was not forged in the fires of rebellion and defined by the Corvus treaties, but was born from civil war and religious strife. It is unique in many respects, most notably for being a strict theocracy ruled by the iron hand and watchful eye of the Temple of Menoth. Religion and government go hand in hand in the Protectorate of Menoth. Religious faith and the worship of the Creator is an aspect of daily life for which even for the most ignorant laborers. While not every citizen of the Protectorate is equally pious or zealous, there is no escaping the omnipresent influence of the Menite priests who control the nation's government, police, judges, and executioners. Ardent believers view themselves as the last bastion of the true religion of mankind and see around them endless examples of heresy and blasphemy. Their nation and faith are inseparable, and now they are part of a key moment in history where a great crusade has been called forth to bring the wayward back into the fold. The Protectorate began as a compromise during the peace talks at the end of the Cygnar Civil War in 484 AR, and for most of its history it was beholden to Cygnar authority. Even in the earliest of years, the Cygnar crown preferred to leave the Sulamenites to govern themselves. The only stipulations imposed upon the people of the Protectorate were that they continued to pay taxes to the throne, and that they would not create a standing army. Even these mild limits would eventually fall by the wayside, and for the last several decades the Protectorate had acted as an increasingly sovereign state. The situation reached a head during the Lycian War, when the Protectorate launched attacks against Cygnar and the two severed all lingering tides. Over the last century, the Protectorate has developed a unique culture centered on a strict caste-based theocracy. While the Menite priests like to think of their role as an extension of the ancient beliefs, their theocracy is a uniquely modern invention and includes many reinterpretations of sacred texts. The leaders of this nation are both more fanatical than Menites of the recent past and pragmatic when it comes to making use of developments such as mechanica. The Protectorate is noted for extremely strict laws controlling virtually every aspect of the citizens' lives. Within the city's walls and fortress temples of the Protectorate, Menite's will is the law meant to govern all mankind, honored above all else and followed without question or hesitation. In the past, decades of the Protectorate have heavily taxed by Cygnar, which stoked the fires of enmity. In retaliation, the theocracy prohibited the use of Cygnar coinage within their borders. Visiting merchants and travelers had to change their coins at exorbitant rates for Protectorate currency or risk engaging in illegal transactions. When many making arrangements with those who would not accept their currency, the theocracy has paid in uncut diamonds harvested from their mines, to the surprise of the Cygnarans, who had chided the land, believing it is barren and devoid of resources. Despite the accord in 484 AR that ended the Cygnar Civil War, still Menites view the Cygnar crown and adherents of the Moran faith as Menites' enemies. Sulamenites believe the Moran faith usurped the rightful place of the Creator to gain influence over most of Western Immoren. With such deep and fundamental disagreements, with the Moran way of life, a renewal of this conflict was perhaps inevitable. The sentiment has become increasingly entrenched among the Sulamenites since the rule of Hierarch Ravenal, who had overseen the initial development of the Protectorate's nascent standing army. Ravenal's work was carried forward by his successor, Hierarch Voil, who continued to expand the Menite Warmachine and went so far as to state that the Civil War never truly ended, but there had been simply a prolonged ceasefire. By the terms of the treaties allowing its relative independence, the Protectorate was originally prohibited from establishing an army, a law that proved futile. Publicly, the Visigoths agreed to the Cygnar's conditions for peace, but they continued to train soldiers in secret and hide stockpiles of arms. When the Cygnar dignitaries raised the question about the increasingly obvious militarization of the Protectorate, the standing forces were justified under their pretext of protecting the holy sites from quote-unquote the savage natives. The Llael have indeed become involved in an armed conflict with local Idarian tribes dwelling east of the Black River. In one of the first and most spectacular miracles manifested by Menoth in the modern age, a massive earthquake struck the largest Idarian city as they waged battle with the Menite Crusaders in 504 AR. The Llael were left untouched, while thousands of resistant Idarians were swallowed by the earth and their homes demolished. This demonstration of Menoth's power ultimately saved more lives than it took, as the majority of the local Idarians immediately surrendered and converted to the worship of Menoth, joining the new nation and eventually becoming a significant portion of its population. The blend of converted Idarians and Sulis, once Caspians, would give rise to the rich culture of the Protectorate, which over time would adopt a number of Idarian customs. The event did not end Idarian resistance to spread of the Protectorate, however, and more far and flung tribes continued to refuse to give up their beliefs and fought and died by the thousands for the following decades. Despite this contentious past, Idarians have become a vital part of the theocracy, particularly valued amongst the Templars' martial orders for their loyalty, discipline, and fighting prowess. Geographically, while the Protectorate lacks fertile farmland as well as forests to harvest wood, it has other resources in great abundance. Modern mining techniques have unearthed rich iron veins in the hills of Immoren. Several high-grade quarries have been excavated in this region, fueling the expansion of the capital, Immoren, as well as other structures like Tower Judgment in the north. The harsh wilderness of the Protectorate is blessed with rich diamond veins, and the lands have proven rich in crude oil that can be refined into Menoth's fury, a highly flammable substance that has become vital in the defense of the nation. The greatest blessing has undoubtedly been the Idarians themselves, a people who have bolstered the numbers of the Llael and brought with them skills at warfare, numbers useful for labor, and a fierce dedication to their adopted faith. For decades, the Protectorate quietly stockpiled weapons, bribed inspectors, and gathered its strength. This included the production and refinement of steam jacks, purportedly for labor, but in fact as weapons of war. The adoption of war jacks was one of the first pragmatic concessions made by the Synod of Visigoths in the early days of the Protectorate. The religious tenets of the Menite faith had long disapproved of any magic that was not invoked through the prayer of Menite priests, including the inventions made through mechanica. The Cygnar Civil War amply provided the worth of these machines in battle waged in the Caspia streets, and the Synod decreed that these and other weapons might be useful by the faithful if cleansed through prayer and other rites. Each warjack built by the Protectorate was therefore purified and blessed as it was assembled and made ready for battle, a practice that continues to this day. Other related doctrinal concessions have been made in more recent decades. While Protectorate foundries were capable of creating the basis chassis and weaponry of the warjacks, they were inevitably unable to produce the cortex, a highly technological and advanced piece of mechanica. Early on, the artifactors had to rely on foreign-built cortexes, salvaged from fallen machines or smuggled into the nation, such as from Menite sympathizers in Khador. This ended when Khador launched the Llaesian War and declared all cortexes too valuable to be sent abroad, even to a power hostile to its enemy. Those involved in the smuggling trade were declared traitors, and the Protectorate was left to find other means of acquiring them. This gave rise to the founding of the Vassals of Menoth, an extreme measure that began with the capture and enslavement of foreign arcanists capable of cortex construction. Several high-skilled arcanist mechanics from Ord and Cygnar were forced to create new cortexes and train others to do so. As with the purification of warjacks, the Protectorate believes this work is dangerous and involves unholy energies, but its proper measures can be reduced to this taint and allowed to cleanse the weapons to be built in order to bolster the Great Crusade. Today, Mechanica has become an accepted part of life in the Protectorate, even if the Arcane is still treated with suspicion. Well before Hierarch Voil's declaration of the Great Crusade, relations between Cygnar and the Protectorate had been on the steady decline. While Sul-Menites had taken measures to hide the full extent to which they were to prepare an army, it was obvious that they were not in compliance with the treaties that had ended the Civil War. Just as his predecessor had, Cygnar's King Leto Ralphthorn chose not to enforce these treaties, knowing armed conflict would result. Furthermore, Hierarch Voil intentionally forestalled the conflict for which he was preparing to periodically send emissaries to discuss grievances between the two powers, leaving an impression of diplomatic solution might be possible. Several key factors inevitably converged to whip the Protectorate into a frenzy required to launch its crusade. The first and most important of these was the rise of the Harbinger of Menoth in the Northern Protectorate. A young girl emerged from a small village, one who had clearly been chosen by Menoth to serve as the creator's prophet on Cain. Floating in the air by dint of holy power, and capable of channeling the raw might of the lawgiver, the Harbinger was also gifted with visions, wherein the will of Menoth would be revealed to her, and through her to the Synod and the Hierarch. For centuries, Menoth had been a remote presence, occupied by higher matters in Urcaean, and rarely deigning to pay heed to Cain. The arrival of the Harbinger sent shockwaves to the religious communities of Western Immoren as a tangible sign that not only the Menites are willing to that Menoth was willing to intervene in the world, but also that he clearly supported the Sul-Menite cause. Together, the Harbinger and the Hierarch decided it was time for the crusade to be upon them, particularly with Cygnar distracted in the north and the onset of the Lysian War. Knowing Caspia might be left vulnerable, hostilities erupted in full. A mighty armed expedition marched north from the Protectorate, led by Grand Secretator Severius and accompanied by the Harbinger. This would become known as the Northern Crusade, and would battle heathens in Cygnar and the Thornwood, and eventually seize gains in eastern Llael. Meanwhile, northern forces laid siege to Caspia. In the opening salvo will become known as the Caspian-Sul War, a fierce and extensive clash between the two adjoining cities that has only recently ended. This war was costly for both sides and included a full invasion into Sul, followed by a nearly year of turmoil in its streets, and then a counter-invasion into Caspia after regaining Sul. Neither city escaped these conflicts unscathed, and its inhabitants both remain on high alert. The conflict came to an end with the death of Hierarch Garrick Voil and the retreat of the crusading armies. The leadership of the nation passed to Hierarch Severius. Sul has entered into a period of rebuilding, and a tense ceasefire has been established between the garrisons on either side of the Black River, although smaller intermediate conflicts between these armies still erupt elsewhere along the border. While the battle between Caspia and Sul resulted in each side retaining their respective cities, the Protectorate has made great gains in the recent conflicts. The Northern Crusade seized the Llaelian city of Immoren, an extremely defensible mountain fastness that has become a home of the Crusade and the central of ongoing operations in that region. Emir remains the capital, but Hierarch Severius has made Immoren his temporary seat, and from there supervises the Northern Crusade, which boasts a sizable portion of the Protectorate's military might. The Synod continues to govern the Protectorate's heartlands in the south, their actions continually scrutinized by junior secretators loyal to the Hierarch. In addition to furthering the plans of the Great Crusade in the north, the seizure of additional lands has brought additional converts and resources to the Protectorate. The Lysian region is far more fertile than the barren soils of the southeast, and such gains may very well be a boon to the Sul-Menites in the long term. Such gains take time to trickle down, particularly in a time of war, and the citizens of the Protectorate live in astute conditions, even compared to the smaller towns in the Khadoran north. All the citizens are expected to contribute to the temple in terms of both goods produced and strength of arms when needed. In theory, the citizens require little more than their faith, but not everyone is equally devout. The Scrutadors maintain a watchful presence, as do Mennite monks dressed as ordinary citizens, who watch for any who would speak out or act against the theocracy. Such blasphemers can be incinerated, incarcerated, and subject to punishment at any time, and require little to no evidence beyond the suspicion of the temple authorities. While most Sul Mennonites are pious and love their Creator, there is no question that worship services are zealously attended by all as much from fear from the Scrutadors that out of pure religious sentiment.